Next, I have got Councillor Baldry. I'll tell you who I have here now. I've got Councillors Baldry, Smurden, Holway and Thomas in that order, right? Right? Okay, Councillor Baldry.
Thank you, Chairman. I see Councillor Bastone stood up. I'm very tempted to stand up because I can be a bit more dramatic and speak better when I'm standing on my feet, but I will abide by your recommendation and remain seated.
I only said you didn't have to. If you wish to, you could stand out to the side. I'd be only too pleased to see you.
It's a problem with the sound system.
Right, okay.
Can I make just a couple of general points? First of all, I said at the budget meeting last year that I could no longer support abiding by the government's recommendation on underfunding councils by not funding them out of direct taxation and instead expecting us to increase our council tax to meet their requirements. I'm sticking to that. I think council tax is a very unfair tax. It hits people irrespective of their ability to pay, and that is for as long as I'm on this council. I can no longer vote for increases of 2.85 or 5%, £5 in council tax. Councillor Bastone has mentioned the fact that we are small beer compared with other authorities. The reality is that I am only a South Hams district councillor and a parish councillor. At my parish council, I voted for no increase, and I will continue to do so here. I would dearly like to be still on Dover County Council, where I could have made the same point about not voting in favour of it. After I spoke at the executive meeting, I had an email from a resident which said, what world are these people in? And I presume by that, these people he's referring to the other executive members who voted for the council tax increase. Do they not realise the hardship which people are facing? And that is something I strongly believe in. We should not be increasing council tax automatically at the government's bidding. The reference I've made to the obscene, in my opinion, £2 million level of reserve sitting in a bank account in order that senior officers and Conservative councils can sit and feel comfortable. That is not the reality of the real world. People are struggling. We are taking in a legal manner from people's purses, their wallets and their bank accounts money, which it is their money, it is not South Hams money. The people who we are taking the money from have much greater need of it than our council has of sitting in a bank account. People are really struggling. The level of increase in fuel charges is just one example. Food, they'd rather be spending their money on food than sitting in a South Hams bank account. I shall vote for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. Councillor Smurden, next.
Oops. Thank you, Chair. I need to take issue with the idea that this is, a one-off. If it's held for this year, then it's okay, because it's not. There's a compound effect that if we don't raise the council tax for South Hams this year, then for subsequent years going forward, that money is also lost and can never be recovered. So it's not actually just for this year. Councillor Birch mentioned the sums which we are, with justification, withholding against poor performance from our waste contractor. But that money, I believe, is ring-fenced and held in an escrow account. We may not be able to access that money for many years until the mediation process is gone through. We're fortunate to have an excellent finance team, ably led by our Section 151 officer, Lisa Buckle. They've worked long and hard on this budget, putting in many hours of officer time, and I don't intend, or I certainly intend to, that time is put to good use, and we don't disregard their advice. Whilst it may be tempting to freeze the council tax in light of poor performance from one part of our service delivery, we must be mindful of the financial pressures which lie ahead. We are the only Devon district that doesn't charge for garden waste service, and I welcome the large sum that we are committing to community composting. Other parts of service delivery have performed well, especially the management of paying out COVID support grants to vital support to businesses and residents. So I'm afraid I can't support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Smerdon. Next on the list is Councillor Holway.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for not making us stand up.
Well, I did give you special dispensation because
did.
you've just come out of hospital with a,
You did.
you're now a bionic man, I believe.
Yeah. Chairman, I understand the motivation for this amendment, but my concern is that I see an awful lot of affluent people in the South Hams. Now, you know, you can laugh and say, oh, you're looking at the wrong people. No, I'm not. And I understand that 10p a month might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But because by reducing council tax, we're actually giving money back or not charging money to everyone, it includes all the people on the higher tax bands. We're going to end up giving more money or taking less money, if you like, off of the people with all the money in the big houses than we are the people who are less well off. And that concerns me. And I would far rather we kept this money in the coffers, and if our central government do not come up with the right kind of measures to protect those less well off and the more vulnerable, then I would hope that we could selectively target money towards helping those people who are unable to cope. And that's why I will not be voting for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holway. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. On that last point from Councillor Holway, of course, people in the big houses are already benefiting and have done for a number of years from things like winter fuel allowance. There is sadly a precedent already that says that some taxes are given across the rebates are given across the board. Going back to the substantive point, I agree with the leader. What the leader said at the start of this debate. There are many services that the council provides for its residents, but it is an undeniable fact that the waste collection and the recycling collection is seen by the majority of residents as one of the one single most important thing that the council delivers for its residents. And, through FCC that hasn't happened. The other thing I wanted to make a comment on is that I'm not an accountant, unlike Councillor Holway, but it does seem that the evidence that we would be losing money year on year is only predicated on the understanding that we will be putting the council tax up year on year. And I regret, and I feel sorry, we don't talk about politics very often. We try and work hard with our colleagues in this chamber, but I feel sorry for my Conservative colleagues over there who are being forced by a Conservative government to put up the council tax year on year, who are being told that is the only way to fund services. Frankly, I find that disgusting that a hard-working local authority of hard-working officers and volunteer councillors who are giving up their own time are being told that the only way we can pay for services is by being forced to put up council tax. I think that's a very sorry starting point for us to have to make rational decisions. As such, I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor McKay.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. I would like to agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Baldry said. There is real hardship out there at the moment. The level of debt that people are suffering is going through the roof, and organisations like Citizens Advice and various others who try to support people in debt are being inundated with calls, and we've still not got to the point where the full impact of this has been realised. So to impose a further burden on these people, I think is quite wrong. I also think that this argument that that the £200,000 is the beginning of a compound error that will result in £2 million loss is entirely specious. There is provision in the legislation whereby you can increase council tax beyond the maximum. The maximum is only a maximum whereby you have to have a referendum. there is good we are in very difficult times at the moment, and people are really suffering, and so I think there's no reason to put it up at the moment, and in future it could go up way beyond the so-called maximum. It's not really a maximum; it's just a threshold whereby you've got to have a referendum. And I also would add that the council tax reduction scheme is an opportunity to level up. The council tax is highly regressive. Everybody knows this, and I know that within the council tax reduction legislation, the council has a great deal of flexibility, and there is an opportunity there to radically reform the way we administer council tax reduction to make it a much fairer tax. And so I will be supporting this on the basis that there is all sorts of alternatives open to this council in the future. And right today, we cannot be seen to be increasing the council tax, and that's without regard to the waste debacle, which clearly is another good reason for not doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, right. I find the arguments from the opposition very interesting. Councillor Mackay has said about a referendum if we wanted to put the council tax up by more than the allotted sum which we are allowed to do so. Well, the referendum will cost us more money than probably we would raise out of the council tax. So that's a non-starter, a non-goer for starters. And going back to when in 1995-99, when I first got on the council, the first year the council was ruled by a non-aligned anti-conservative group. And during their 4 years in power, they put the council tax up by 33%. And now they're saying they don't want to put the council tax up, keep it as it is. Now, I would also ask you, what can you buy for £5 during the year? You can hardly buy a tube of toothpaste in a shop for £5 when you're doing your weekly shop. So £5 is not an awful lot of money, and with prudent housekeeping, prudent budgeting, I am sure that even people on the lowest incomes, of which there are many, but there are also people that are much better off. We've always had this high and low income brackets, and they can budget so they can afford to pay. And if people look in their fridges, they've probably got chuck out £5 worth of food a week, which they don't eat because it's past its sell-by date. And if you're talking about the refuse collection, I'm fed up with hearing about the green waste and the grey and the brown bins, because recently I have noticed, and since we got past Christmas and into New Year, when the collections went back to normal, the bags and the grey bins have been emptied pretty regularly, and I think we've had a lot less missed collections than we had before. And we do hope, I believe, to restore the green waste bin collection fairly soon in the spring, we're told, and hopefully we should be up and running. And we've also allotted a lot of money, I think it's 120,000 or something like that, for composting, to get composting going in our local parishes. There's a lot of money out there, but must be a prudent council. We've got to run our services in the correct manner, and if we have to cut services, I also remember that there was the night of the long drawn knives when a lot of our staff were made redundant because our council budget was not balanced and we couldn't afford to keep all the staff on. So we did actually get rid of a lot of staff at one point too. So I feel that it is important that we keep our finances straight. We've got our officers who work hard to make sure that we've got the correct balanced budget, and therefore we should be supporting the budget which we have in front of us and not this amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Brazil, going to know the right to speak.
Yeah, I'll say my bit now, if I may. I've been on this council a long time too, although not quite as long as Rose. But I think I've heard it all now. I've heard my Conservative colleagues telling me that it's a mistake not to put up taxes. I've also heard them saying that we want to tax our council residents £2 million, an extra £2 million. That's not the Conservatives that I was brought up with. I thought you were meant to be a low tax party, but obviously not. You just say you are, but then put up taxes. We'll move on to, first of all, one of the reasons why I'll be supporting this amendment is, as we've heard before, is that I refuse to be complicit with a disgraceful and discredited government. They've had the opportunity to put up taxes, and so what have they done? They've taxed working people, haven't taxed wealth. And as Tom said, there's lots of wealthy people in the South Hams, people who could well afford to pay a little bit extra, but no, they've chosen to tax working people and companies on top of that, and they've also chosen to put in their course is to say that we should put up our council tax, an incredibly regressive tax. What that means is that it affects the poor much worse than the rich. And that is a kind of tax that we should get rid of in this country. And it's one of the reasons why we are becoming a more of a polarised country as the haves and the rich get richer and the poors and the have-nots get worse off. And we should make a stand and do something about that. So I think that that's the politics out of the way. But also, I remember in this council, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when we were told, we all knew that the government were cutting our budget and that we were going to become innovative and entrepreneurial and more business-like. And we had a big wad of these schemes we were going to do that was going to raise so much money for the council that we wouldn't have to rely on council taxpayers. Nothing's happened at all. Nothing's happened at all. The only thing we have got is we've got a lottery. I think that's the only thing. That's the only money-raising venture that we've actually managed to get out of this council is a lottery. I'd love to know how much money that makes, if any. So what I say to my Conservative colleagues is, if you believe that the only way to raise revenue to pay for the services is to put up taxes, then step aside and allow this side to come up with the innovation, the ambition for the South Hams that will pay for those services without causing the most vulnerable to have to pay extra in taxes. And if you can't do that, and so what I say to you is, come and join us. Come and join us. If that's what you want to do, if that's how you feel, if you genuinely feel that a council's purely revenue-raising thing is only about putting up taxes, then shame on you. Shame on you because that's not what I believe this council should be doing and how it should be paying for its services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, totally endorse, if you can hear me, what was just been said, and would like to support this amendment. It's been said about the year like no other, where we've got high inflation for people, energy price rises, national insurance price rises, and the less well-off will, of course, struggle. In particular on the waste service that's been mentioned. It's been said by Councillor Bastone about politicking. I think that's a very unhelpful thing to say when councillors are trying to represent their residents and are trying to listen to them. And we've had a terrible time with the waste service. We've had constantly residents saying, what can we do? What can you do to help us? Can we have a rebate? And we've constantly said as a council, we can't do anything. And we've kind of stonewalled them. And I think apart from helping them generally with high inflation, etc., that's been said, it will help to show that we are trying to listen to what people are actually saying, the people that we represent. And this is what it's all about. It's not about politics unless you believe politics is in everything, which it is. So if it is in everything, then it's a good thing. Personal is the politics. And it's about helping people. It's about trying to represent the people who elected us. And they didn't elect us to sit around and talk about money in this reserve and that reserve. They elected us to help them in their everyday lives. And okay, we don't, with any council apparently in Devon that doesn't charge for garden waste, but we provide that service, and then we suddenly withdrew it. People had full brown bins full of stinking waste, and they had to get rid of it. So they've been paying out of their own pocket, which they didn't expect or budget to do, to get rid of this garden waste, or they did in most districts anyway. One or two they didn't, because other arrangements were made. But that's not what people had expected to do, and we should acknowledge that. And that's part of why I think this amendment is the right thing to do this year, and it's not an annual thing, it's a one-off, and it really isn't very much to ask at all. So I'm surprised that it's not being accepted on the other side of the room. So, as I said, I'm supporting this amendment. I think it's very fair and it's very reasonable and it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't normally talk about politics and criticising our opposition here because I don't like doing that. I literally do not like doing that because I'm just as what Councillor has said before just now. I am a councillor because I want to represent my residents, I want to represent my communities, and that is why I'm a councillor. I happen to be a Conservative as well as being a community councillor. I have sat here for many, many years, just as Keith has, Rose and Julian has, and I don't think I've ever known a budget discussion where my colleagues on the Liberal Democrat Party have actually said they want to cut taxes or not raise taxes. Every single year they have put, in my belief, they have put amendments to increase taxes wherever possible. Yes, we Conservatives don't like to raise taxes. This is literally 10p a week. As Councillor Rowe has said, it's less than it's just over £5 a year. Now we have to, £5 a year, that's what I said. It's £5 a year, just over £5 a year. Oh, it is, sorry, just £5. Sorry, it's £5. I've just been told my mental arithmetic is wrong. I do apologise, Leader. I never did get what I should have at school. But we have to represent our residents, and that is why we are a prudent council, and that is why I will be supporting the budget process, because what we have to do is protect those services and ensure that our council has the officers in place to ensure those people that need protection and need our support, we have a capacity to do that. Now, we've been talked about inflation going up, and we talk about austerity 12 years ago. I actually fear for the next 2 or 3 years because I think austerity 10 years ago, 12 years ago is going to be perhaps considerably easier than what we're going to go through in the future. We have to protect our services. The opposition have said about waste and FCC. FCC have failed our residents, not this council. They have a contract, and we have been speaking, as Councillor Baldry knows, until recently, a weekly meeting has been taking place with FCC to actually ensure that they fulfil the contract that they have got with us as a council and also our residents. Councillor Brazil says that he wanted investment and wants investment in the future of our council and our area. To my knowledge, every time this council has suggested investment and possibilities for investment, he has practically always said no. And I do find that is a strange argument, Councillor Brazil, because you've practically always said no, or have always tried to find a reason why we can't put investment and why we can't do innovative, I can't even pronounce it, innovative, there we are, things in our communities. We are a good council, we're a prudent council, we've had trouble with FCC, which has got to be resolved, we all know that, but we unfortunately need to raise council tax this year because we have to protect those most vulnerable in our community and ensure that we have the services and the officers in place to do just that.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've got some notes here, and I just want to that I've just written down as we've gone along, and it's really easy when you're in opposition to want to not raise the council tax and bring down the reserves, because actually you can say what you want because you've got no say because you can't have the votes. So it's easy to vote, it's easy to say things that actually cannot happen. The council tax is going to be raised by 0.096 pence per week, less than 10 pence. Yes, every penny counts. Every penny counts in my household as well as your household. Every penny counts every night when my husband comes home and moans because the central heating control's on 32 and he wants it on 18. So yes, every penny counts for all of us. I'm worried, Councillor McKay. You need to think about what you said in particular out of everything that's been said, because your words earlier were, we can freeze I've got electoral in my mind. We can freeze the budget this year with and have no increase, but next year we can have a referendum to increase it to get back to normal. That's absolutely what this council, this administration is not about. The last thing we would ever want is a referendum, because we would want to increase council tax by more than £5 per year. So Councillor McKay, I think Councillor Brazil's words are shame on you. So shame on you, Councillor McKay, that you actually think it's absolutely correct to go to a referendum because you don't want to raise income tax, you don't want to raise tax this year, but next year you do. That's really sad. And what else is sad is that very few of you seem to understand compound interest. If we don't raise council tax this year by 200, and we don't raise it this year, we do lose £10 million over 10 years, because that's how much it's going to cost. And God help us, a referendum to get us back to £10 million? I really don't think so. Councillor Brazil, you need to look at what the Seymour Lottery has brought into the South Hams community groups. I know how many groups it's helped. It's helped over 130 groups raise money for good causes that they wouldn't have had money for. So I think the Seymour Lottery, although it is a slow burner and it's a quiet burner, 130 plus groups have been helped out by that Seymour Lottery. So I welcome that. Yes, Councillor O'Callaghan, you're absolutely right. We are here to help our residents. I completely agree with you. But then you caveat that and you say, instead of what money is in this reserve and that reserve, well, this reserve and that reserve is what helps keeps council tax down and what helps keep our services running. We have to look at everything holistically, and we have to realise we have to have reserves. Another thing, we did not withdraw the garden waste service. We suspended it. We didn't withdraw it. And also, one last thing, this council is working extremely hard to resolve the waste issues, and I'm sure that sooner rather than later an outcome will be forthcoming for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hotwood. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Chairman. Not sure how I'll follow that. I perhaps would ask that could we have some of those 32 degrees in here, because it's getting a bit chilly. But anyway, I looked at this when it came through by email, and I've got to be honest, I had a great deal of sympathy for what I read. And I've got a lot of respect for Councillor Birch for putting it forward. And I'm a resident, and I don't want to pay more than I have to. In fact, I don't even want to pay what I'm currently paying, but that's another story. So my heart goes out, and I think this is something that, if you rule it with your heart, then you probably go with it. My problem is, however, that the amendment only deals with the immediate implication. And we've talked about compound interest or the lack of it and how much people understand about it. But the implication goes way beyond this year. The implication of suspending this increase goes way beyond this year, however you want to measure that. It does go way beyond this year. And so in a lot of respects, I think that if you don't make some sort of increase, then you're actually storing up problems for the future. And a lot of these things, as I understand it, are things that aren't within our control as to what the government may or may not do. So it sounds to me to be quite prudent to implement some sort of increase. I think also that we employ a very professional team of individuals who put together these proposals in the original recommendations, and some very professional individuals within that. And I think they worked very hard to produce the recommendations they produced. And I think their expertise almost certainly exceeds most of the members in this room. And I'm going to come up with a phrase I have used before, but why have a dog and bark yourself? And that I apologise to Lisa and her team. There's nothing personal there. I'm just trying to make a point. So I think with all of that, and couple that with the fact that Devon County councillors are increasing council tax, I would vote against this amendment for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Sweet.
Thank you. I have been listening with great interest to the debate on both sides. I think Lisa, in the very beginning of the debate, said that the reason that there is actually 2 million in the reserves, in the unearmarked reserves, is because there's a series of what-if, worst-case scenarios. I believe that what John McKay said about if there was a worst-case scenario in the future, there could be a referendum. So I didn't really understand what he said as saying there has to be a referendum like next year if we were to not put the council tax up this year. But I think, as you know, we're talking about £5, so it's an awful lot of discussion for £5. I do really hear that we would be losing 2 million, but I have to agree with some of the comments that Councillor Brown and Councillor Baldry have made. You know, that this cross-the-board tax on everybody, it isn't fair. You know, we should be, especially at this point, thinking about taxing the more wealthy. You know, that has to be the way forward and what central government is looking at, because we've all seen the headlines of these like insane profits that huge companies make. So in light of a further increase in energy bills in April, I have to support the amendment. Although I very much hear arguments on both sides, but you know, really we need to be doing our bit in light of all the kind of crazy stuff with the waste collection in the last year. You know, that has to be really acknowledged. And if supporting the amendment really acknowledges that, I think, you know, we are really doing justice to our residents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Sweet. I think, as there are no more questions, I'm going to call upon.
Who's got the amendment?
Just indicating that I quite obviously have a right to reply, so I'll speak last.
No, you don't.
I'm with respect. Chapter 3, meeting procedure, rule 15.3a provides that where an amendment is being moved, the mover of the amendment has a right to reply. That is, I'll say again, Chapter 3, meeting procedure, rule 15.3a. Thank you.
I will take advice on that. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I've got to take. That's fine. No, that's okay. No, Councillor Birch, I'm not going to. You've asked a question. You made a point, which you're quite entitled to do so. But if you're right, it's something we've done wrong for a long time. Yeah.
Can I just read it out? This is what
no, I'm not arguing with you. No, not at all. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it's always, in the case in the past I understood that, but if we're wrong, we're
15.3
wrong.
is a show of hands.
I'll wait Mr Fairburn to come up and just advise me and,
Council
go from there.
procedures, 15.3 show of hands.
To assist, I am referring to the document that was approved at the full council meeting in July last year. I think it's either Appendix A or Appendix B. It's headed Chapter 3, Meeting Procedure Rules. Got a lot of red typing on it, but if you go down to 15 point, I'm scrolling my way down, 15.3, brackets A, close brackets, the proposer of a motion or an amendment shall have the right to speak immediately after making the proposal, or may opt to exercise that right at a later stage in any debate. This is in addition to the proposer's right to speak before a vote is taken, and that was passed at full council July last year.
More mics on them.
Sorry.
Chairman, I'm looking at the version of the meeting procedure rules that is on the website, and Council Procedure Rule 15.9, headed right of reply, says 15.9C, the proposer of an amendment has no right of reply to the debate on his or her amendment.
Yes. Well, with respect, the constitution that is on the council's website is not correct. It's all over the place. The document that we must go to is the one that this council passed when it last discussed the constitution, which was last July. And I've read it out, what we agreed last July. The fact that you're relying on a document that's on the council's website, which is incorrect, is not an authority in my view.
Chairman, the version that's on the website also coincides with the version of the appendix, which sets out the rules of debate in a flow diagram, and that indicates that the proposer of an amendment does not have the right to reply, and that the person with the final right of speaking on the amendment is indeed the proposer of the original motion.
In that case, if you can understand my difficulty, but I have to go with Mr Fairbairn's thing. Councillor Birch, you want to take
Well, this is yet again another a misinterpretation of the constitution, which is a way of putting down the opposition in this council, and I think it is most wrong.
I am going to say, what you've said has been noted. It will be looked into. But I've always understood in the past, when I've chaired meetings, that the proposer does his piece at the front and does it, and it's always been the case of not having any reply. I've got other minutes to back that up from the past, and that the leader has the final say. Now, I think we've given it a pretty good airing this morning. I was going to say that when I finished off. The very fact that we have debated, whatever the result of this today is, it's been very well debated by members, which is as it should be. But I'm going to have to go the legal advice I've got at the present time, and Mrs. Pearce, as leader, you have the right to finish this debate off. This is the debate on the amendment. Yeah, debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to mention names, but I do think that in some of the speeches that have been made this morning, there has been deliberate misunderstanding and representation of what has been said by one member on one side, or by some members on one side about what members on the other side have said. Now, to take the waste collection first, there are a high percentage of residents in the district who have not been affected by disruptions in the waste system at all. And we did suspend the brown bin waste, but just because, for the very reason that we can't give refunds for services that people would normally expect, but we can't for whatever reason deliver. We have offered £200,000 by way of compensation to set up community composting schemes, because we were listening to what people were saying, and we know that there are a number of communities around the district who would like to set them up, and we think this is a really good idea. There's also been considerable confusion, I think, is the most polite way of putting it, in what people have been saying about the 5p increase. If we didn't have it, it would be considered as a reduction in council tax or a refund. Well, it won't. And there's also been criticism of the 5p hitting the poorest most. Now, it may and it may not, because council tax is a tax on property rather than a tax on people. And I think that is the root of the problem. But if you recall, when we had a poll tax, it was even worse. So I don't know what the right solution is for local taxes, but we are stuck with the system we've got. Now, the 5p is the increase on a Band D property. So if you live in less than a Band D, you won't be paying as much as nearly 10p a week. You'll be paying slightly less than £5 increase. If you live in a Band G or a Band H property, you will probably be paying the equivalent of a £20 increase over the year, or at least a £15 increase over the year, because the actual rate of multiplier goes up quite considerably in those higher brackets. So from that point of view, whilst we don't want to call on people to pay more, it is reasonably fair that that's how it works out. I would also remind you of this slide that appeared at the budget workshop, in which it was shown that last year the overall increase that people had to pay on a Band D council tax was £99.73, of which £5 was made up by the South Hams increase. Therefore, if we don't increase by £5, the rest of the increase is still going to fall on people anyway. And in fact, we're likely to have people saying, you said you weren't going to put your council tax up. Why has my bill gone up by £90 this year? And we shall have to say, well, actually, that's not our increase. That's because of the police service putting theirs up by £10, which we know they're going to do, and by the county council putting theirs up by the amount they're going to put it up. So I would suggest to you that actually politically, the £5, it's not that it won't be seen, but if we don't put it on, we'll still get accused of putting up the council tax by a huge amount of money.
Lisa, I'm going to have to ask you to wind up. We're up to time.
Okay. Well, finally, well, what I'd like to explain is, just before I do, that this £5 goes on the base budget. That's what nobody has mentioned, the base budget, yet in all this discussion we've had. If it goes on the base budget, then it is there forever. So £5 from everybody equates to £200,000. So if we don't get that, that's £200,000 we haven't got next year and for successive years. And that is where the £2 million loss in spending power comes from over 10 years, because it's £200,000 a year for the next 10 years, and that makes £2 million.
That point has already been made, I think. I'm sorry.
Okay.
To be fair,
Right.
I must stop you there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry I had to stop you, but to be fair, I had to do that. But the only one in this room who hasn't said anything is me, I think, on this subject.
That's all right.
I was beginning to wonder where I was going to write names down next, to be quite honest. But anyway, this is a difficult one. Of course, it's a difficult one about putting up council tax. I know people that work in the Citizens Advice Bureau and the difficulties that some of the other people are having. But £5 a year, less than £5 a year, on a house. Was it the old man's £1 of beer a week or whatever? I know that sounds a bit flippant, but that's really talk. There are some families down the bottom end, but there is help. There is help. They're available, and the Citizens Advice Bureau are doing that, finding funds that we've got here to help those people. And the leader has very well put the very fact this compound doing effect of doing this, following this motion, will have over the long term. And talking about if buts and maybes, yes, there's hundreds of if buts and maybes. But I will say this, and I don't want to embarrass her, we have got one of the best 151 officers probably in Devon, probably further afield than that. And I will listen to her every time. She number crunches, and as one member said, we've all got a greater or lesser degree in understanding finance, but I think she has always had her finger on the ball. When I first saw about council tax, I thought like you on the other side, do we really have to put it up this year? But when it was explained, the long-term consequences, that was me. So anyway, I think I've said. Recorded vote on the amendment. Okay, Mr. White.
Thank you very much, Chair. Therefore, members, we're voting on the amendment, which is in the red font on the screens. In alphabetical order, Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Austin. Against. Councillor Baldry.
For.
Councillor Bastone.
Against.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Brazil.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Chown.
Against.
Councillor Foss.
Against.
Councillor Hawkins.
Against.
Councillor Hodgson.
For.
Councillor Holway.
Against.
Councillor Hopwood.
Against.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Kemp.
For.
Councillor McKay.
For.
Councillor Callaghan.
For.
Councillor Pannell.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Pringle.
Against.
Councillor Reeve.
Against.
Councillor Rowe.
Against.
Councillor Smurden.
Against.
Councillor Spencer.
Against.
Councillor Sweet.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
Against.
And Councillor Thomas. Thank you, members. That's therefore 12 votes in favour with 16 against, and that amendment is therefore declared lost. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. White. I will now move on to invite Councillor McKay to the second amendment.
Thank you.
Can I just remind you, after the difficulty that Councillor Birch found himself in, I suggest that you more than move it, that you actually have your say early. Don't feel that you could come in at the tail end because.
Okay. Even though I probably would be motivated to do so, but is the amendment up on the screen yet? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You can't read it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, this amendment is to help an organisation called Sustainable South Hams. Now, I know that there is been a change in funding processes that have been put in place. However, I'm putting this amendment forward because I believe that Sustainable South Hams is a unique organisation. And should be dealt with completely separately from that process. There is an opportunity here for the council to work with an organisation that is, that is doing great work throughout the district. There isn't a community organisation, big or small, that they have not helped over the last couple of years that they've been in existence. They are quite extraordinary, and the work they've been doing is making a huge difference. I think the district is getting a benefit from them that many other districts would like to see happen in their own patch. I think there is an opportunity here for the council to really partner with them in the same way as they partner with other organisations, Citizens Advice being one, for instance. But I'm only suggesting in this amendment that we provide a single sum of money. That 22,500. I can itemise if anybody needs it to be itemised, but it is a well thought through and arrived at figure. that will ensure that this group of people can continue their valuable work. It is essential work. We are in a climate emergency, and the word emergency has to, I can't stress it too much. And what they are doing is bringing together people and sharing knowledge, expertise, bringing in outside expertise workers. Anybody who's attended any of their meetings will know that they are the most dynamic organisation in the district, and they are just doing a huge job, and they are become key to our success locally in tackling climate change and biodiversity loss. So I would just urge the council, beg the council to approve this amendment. It is a very small amount of money. Sorry, have I gone over my time or something? Sorry? I have pretty much finished, yeah. I think I've said what I need to say.
Second,
Chairman, I'm seconding.
You want to reserve?
I will reserve my right, please,
Right.
Chairman.
I was going to call in Officer Powell to say a few words. Drew, Officer Powell, Mr. Well, technically, I got him laughing. Yes, Drew Powell to just say a few words on this subject before we get read further into debate.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Just some information really for context for all members about our new climate engagement fund that was launched yesterday. It's in response to the resolution from the executive in December, which asked us to set up a fund to allow community groups and others to access the funding. I think it's important to point out that 60% of the actions on the pathway to the 6th carbon budget, which is how you measure improvements towards our ambition of net zero, rely on behavioural change and societal change. So it really is important to influence people who aren't already engaged with the subject. And this fund directly supports the Council's climate change and biodiversity strategy. It's targeted at district-wide engagement, fostering replicable ideas across the district, and it focuses on the general public from different backgrounds. It's not just those who are already engaged in this sphere. The first tranche is at £50,000 with grants available from £3,000 up to £25,000. There's a simple process whereby any group who fulfills the criteria just puts an expression of interest in. The expression of interest are open now, and there'll be a 4-week period where groups are invited to apply. The key difference with this fund and the previous fund we're operating is that it enables us to actually support a proportionate amount of staff funding, proportionate to the outcomes of that particular project, and to pay for volunteer expenses, which is one of the key criticisms from the groups who operate in this sphere that we addressed last year. The one other thing to say at this stage really is that these schemes that lever in match or additional funding will be looked upon favourably for obvious reasons that will ensure that we get the maximum benefit from the council's investment. There's more information on the website, and officers will be more than happy to speak to any groups who are interested in accessing this fund. Hopefully that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, can we have questions now on this amendment, please? Or is it straight to the vote? Oh, Councillor Smurden and then Councillor Hogwood.
Thank you, Chair. When we've looked at funding partnerships before, organisations in partnership before, and we've had stringent debates within this council about doing so. And organisations which were asked to fulfil the council's criteria were asked to provide detailed business cases and financial breakdowns as to how they operate and to where the money was being spent. Now, I'm sure that Sustainable South Hams is as worthy an organisation as any of the other ones that we're supporting, such as the South Hams Citizens Advice or Southam CVS, but I don't see why they shouldn't be asked to provide the same stringency of financial dealings as all of those other organisations.
Thank you. Councillor Hopwood.
Chairman, mine's just a question. Why has this come as an amendment to the budget rather than through the course it's meant to come through? What's the reason? And as to the answer to that question, I may have a supplementary.
Who's going to answer that one? Why has it come to the budget?
I have been lobbying for the best part of 4 months for funding for this organisation. There was a motion that got timed out at the last council meeting, and now it is here at this as an amendment to the budget. I'm just doing my best to try and get funding for this very, very important organisation. That's why it's here.
Thank you, Councillor McKay, for that explanation. I hear a lot about Sustainable South Hams. I don't think they've come down as far as Woolwell yet, but I'm sure they'll make their way down towards to our end.
We're still on
the
questions.
South Hams. So, well, no, we're debating, yeah. And I think